Utah looks incredible on paper, and that's exactly why so many people make their biggest mistake before moving. If you're researching a move to Utah, you've probably seen the headlines. Best state to live in, strong job growth, one of the youngest populations in the country, incredible access to the outdoors, family-friendly communities, clean cities, safe neighborhoods, and none of that is wrong. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. Most people moving to Utah don't regret the move itself. They regret how they chose where and how to live once they actually got here. And that regret doesn't really show up right away. It shows up after that excitement fades, when daily routines replace the novelty, and when small inconveniences quietly turn into long-term friction. And by that point, fixing it can be expensive, stressful, and sometimes impossible without another move. So in today's video, I want to talk about the single biggest mistake people make when relocating to Utah, why almost nobody sees it coming, and how to avoid it if you're planning to move here. This is not a don't move to Utah style video. Utah is an incredible place to live, but it rewards intentional decisions, not rushed ones, and it punishes assumptions more than people might expect. So here's the honest truth. Utah is not just one experience. It's a collection of very different lifestyles, routines, climates, growth patterns, and cultural pockets packed all into one state. And the biggest mistake people make when moving to Utah is assuming that if they like Utah in general, that they'll like whichever version of Utah they land in. That assumption is where things really start to unravel. Most relocation content treats Utah like one single product, as if living in Utah means the same thing whether you're in Salt Lake City, Lehigh, South Jordan, and so forth. But daily life in Utah changes dramatically based on where you live, how you commute, what industry you work in, and what trade-offs you're willing to make. And people don't usually discover what they're really after until after they've committed. And that's why you hear people say things like, we love Utah, but, and what comes after that but is rarely about Utah as a whole. It's about the mismatch between expectations and reality in the specific place that they chose. Here's how this mistake usually plays out. Most people moving to Utah follow the same general process. They visit for a weekend or maybe a week, they stay in a nice area, they go on a hike, they eat at a good restaurant, and they drive through the really clean, nice neighborhoods. They see the mountains in every direction, they experience Utah at its best. And then they leave thinking, we absolutely love it here. Then they go home and they start researching, they watch YouTube videos like this, they scroll on Zillow, they start comparing prices, they look at square footage, they check school ratings, they research cost of living, and eventually they narrow it down to a few areas that seem to really check all the boxes. The problem is that that entire process is looking through a narrow scope, not necessarily how Utah is going to feel from a day-to-day standpoint. A short visit tells you if you like Utah, but it doesn't tell you if Utah fits your routine and your tolerance and your long-term expectations. And routine is where relocation regret really lives. For example, a lot of people move to Utah for the outdoor lifestyle. They picture quick canyon access, weekend hikes, skiing before work, and a ton of open space. And Utah absolutely delivers that, but what they don't fully account for is the scale. Meaning the Wasatch Front alone is home to more than 2.7 million people, and many of them share those exact same outdoor priorities. That means that trailheads fill up early, canyon traffic backs up on the freeway, ski parking requires planning ahead, some state parks even require a reservation. Outdoor access is still world-class, and if you want to be spontaneous as part of your expectations, that adjustment can really feel jarring. Another common reason people move to Utah is affordability, especially compared to places like California, Washington, Colorado, and other areas of the Northeast. And on paper, Utah often still looks more affordable than some of those areas, but affordability in Utah is highly location specific. The median home price in Salt Lake County versus Utah County and Davis County can vary by hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the city, the side of the freeway that you're on, the proximity to employment centers, and access to infrastructure and amenities. What many people don't fully anticipate is how other costs reshape that affordability over time. We're talking about things like your commute length, your fuel costs, winter driving, vehicle wear and tear in the winter, property tax assessments, HOA dues in your communities, even insurance costs. None of these are real deal breakers individually, but together they can totally change the picture. Families moving for schools and community often experience a different version of this issue. Utah has excellent schools in many areas, but growth can impact districts differently. Some districts are stable and well established, others are growing super fast with shifting boundaries, maybe portable classroom setups, and traffic around school increasing dramatically. What felt really calm during a visit to Utah can feel very different when you're navigating drop off and pickup every single day. And again, none of this means that Utah is not a great place to live. It just means that that experience can vary way more than what people expect. Most relocators optimize the wrong variables. They focus on the house instead of the lifestyle. They focus on purchase price instead of time cost. They focus on square footage instead of routine efficiency. They ask the questions like, can we afford this house? Instead of asking a question like, can we live in this life every day without resentment. Utah sort of magnifies this mistake because it offers so many different versions of a good life. Urban living in Salt Lake City feels nothing like suburb life in, say, South Jordan. Life in Lehigh or Eagle Mountain feels totally different than life in Davis County. Northern Utah feels totally different than Southern Utah. And even within the same county, daily life can change dramatically from one city to the next. Each option has totally different trade-offs, and there really is no one perfect place. There's really only one right fit for you. When people don't really slow down to define what their non-negotiables are, they default to what looks best on paper or what looks best online. And that's when they buy a house that checks the boxes on paper, but maybe creates friction in their real life. And that friction can show up in the form of commute time or seasonal friction or growth friction in certain areas, and that friction compounds quietly over time. This is why I say most relocation regret in Utah has nothing to do with timing the market. It has everything to do with misaligned priorities. People don't regret necessarily moving to Utah. They regret underestimating how specific they want their lifestyle to be. Utah's rapid growth over the last few years has created a lot of noise in both the headlines that you see in the news and on social media. When it comes to the cost of living rankings in Utah, everyone has their own opinion, and most of them oversimplify what's actually happening here. And that noise creates pressure to act quickly and confidently, even when that clarity might be missing. So when you're under pressure, people sort of cling to what feels concrete, whether that's interest rates or incentives or the size of the home. But the people who end up the happiest long-term in Utah are the ones who sort of pause and ask better questions. Instead of asking a question like, is Utah a good place to live? They ask a better question like, what version of Utah fits the life that we're trying to build? And that question changes everything. One of the most common mistakes I see people make is that people choose a house based on primarily size or price, assuming that they'll adjust to the location over time. Sometimes that works, but often the daily cost shows up in longer commute drives, less flexibility, more time in the car, and fewer spontaneous moments. Another common mismatch is the temporary comfort trap. And this is really when people try to justify a decision based on how it feels right now, assuming that future changes will make it easier. Sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. The smarter question to ask is simpler. If nothing changes, does this house still work? And finally, there's the assumption that Utah feels the same everywhere, and it truly doesn't. We're talking about air quality in certain pockets versus others, snowfall and winter inversion patterns, traffic behavior can be different in one corridor versus another, growth timelines aren't necessarily stagnant. You can have two homes at the same price, but can deliver two completely different lifestyles. So how do you avoid this mistake? Well, you flip the process. Instead of starting with listings, you want to start with routine. What does a great weekend look like for you and your family? How important is your commute time to work? How often do you realistically want to access the nature and the outdoors? And what are you willing to trade for space, for price, or for proximity? When people do this first, everything else becomes clear. The compromises become intentional instead of accidental. And sometimes renting first can be the smartest move. Utah is certainly an incredible place to live for the right people in the right setup. But it rewards thoughtful decisions, not rushed ones. The people who thrive here long-term aren't the ones who move the fastest, they're really the ones who understand what they're choosing in the first place. And if you've already made the move here, I would love to hear from you. What do you think trips people up the most about moving to Utah? Is it the cost of living, the growth and the construction happening, the commute expectations, the lifestyle assumptions? Drop a comment below because locals and relocators often see this in a different light. So if that's you and you're sitting at home thinking about a move to Utah, but you're not quite sure which area makes the most sense, reach out to me. My team and I would love to help you. We get calls every week from people just like you wanting to explore Utah. My contact info is below. Would love to schedule a call with you. I'll see you in the next video.